We are now entering into the IVF lab, the sanctum sanctorum of this hospital. Now, you heard an alarm ringing when I entered the door. So the alarm rings, and this is connected to a central alarm system, and anybody who enters the lab, it's always recorded. And all these doors are interlocking doors. So if you close one door, only then the other door opens. And this is to make sure that everything here, everything there remains very sterile. Unless this door is closed, that door doesn't open. Neither does the other door at the back open. So we make sure that there's no impurity getting into the IVF lab. So now we have the IVF theatre, we have an anesthetic apparatus, the patient bed, and most important of all, we have the ultrasound machine. So the ultrasound machine is very important because this is a machine which is exclusive for this area. We use this only for egg collections and embryo transfers. So also sometimes for cyst aspirations. So now we enter into the actual IVF lab, but before that we will see what this is. This is called a vacuum pump, and the vacuum pump is connected to a set which in turn is connected to the aspiration needle, and the aspiration needle actually creates a negative pressure inside the follicle, and this is the vacuum pump which creates a negative pressure, and it sucks down the follicular fluid into the tube. The tubes are then kept in this test tube warmer. Nothing in this lab is kept outside. I mean, the test tubes are never kept outside. It's always in a warmer which keeps the temperature always at 37 degrees centigrade, which is the body temperature. So it is like being in the human body. The eggs are collected, but you keep it here for about 3 or 4 tubes or till you finish one patient. Then this warmer goes into the hatch. Now this hatch is a very important concept because once again it is a closed space. If you open it, then all the tubes in the warmer are kept into this digiblock, and this digiblock once again maintains temperature at 37 degrees centigrade. So all the time the follicular fluid is at 37 degrees centigrade. Now only when I close this door will now this is an alarm going off. So the outer door is now locked. Automatically it's locked. Nobody can enter the lab till I close this door. So once again, now this door opens only when that side is closed. The embryologist then picks up the tubes from there, and then he goes to the microscope. Now the microscope is a heated area. The entire thing, this is a laminar airflow which gives pure air and keeps pure air all the time, and the microscope, we use it to look at the eggs. So this is the microscope with which we look at the eggs, and once the tubes are there, it is kept in this digiblock so that the tubes are maintained at 37 all the time, and even when we keep the dish here, the dish should be at 37. So this entire thing is all heated once again. So this is a heated laminar airflow, and you look at the displays all the time. When you look at the oxygen, carbon dioxide, the temperature, everything is recorded there. Now it's important to tell you about the air systems in this IVF lab. Now we have what we call a HEPA filter, which actually is the first filtering system. So this is the HEPA filter. It's actually the first filtering system which filters all the abnormalities, and this is actually incorporated in the air conditioning system. Now the second level of filtering is called the CODA filter. The space is going to be there, and the CODA filter absorbs the rest of the impurities. Now once again, the third filter is the charcoal filter, which is fitted in the incubator. So this is the charcoal filter which is actually fitted in, and the humidity inside is maintained with this humidifier, so that all the things are maintained in perfect condition. So very important, this is one of the top end incubators, and it has 10 chambers, and each chamber can accommodate 2 patients' embryos. So in total we can accommodate 20 patients' embryos in this incubator, and when you open, make sure that only 2 patients' embryos are exposed and all the others are still kept in condition. Now you would note that all these settings are actually for each system, because each space here is actually, it measures separately. So space 1, space 2, space 3, space 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So all spaces, it has independent monitoring systems, and whatever happens inside, you can measure the same, you can see the same temperature outside. You also look finely at the carbon dioxide and oxygen concentrations, and sometimes we have a mixed gas, it measures that as well. So this is a very important, one of the top end incubators, which is designed by K Systems, which is considered one of the best in the world. And the next is actually the Hera cell. This is another type of incubator, but we use this, it can be used for embryos as well, but we use it mainly to incubate our catheters, our tubes and the culture media when we want to equilibrate it overnight. So this incubator is, when you open it, the entire system is opened. So therefore, we do not use it for purposes of okay. We do not use it for purposes of keeping the culture, the embryos. We use it only to incubate the culture media and the disposables. Now the third one is the embryoscope. The embryoscope is going to be placed here, and it's one of the current upgraded embryoscopes. Embryoscope is the highest incubator available, and it has spaces for each patient, and it has a 15 patient embryoscope. You can keep 15 patients' embryos inside, and the most important thing is that it is a totally closed system. Once you keep the embryos inside, you never take it out unless it goes into the uterus or it goes into freezing. So all manipulations and all settings, the growth of the embryo, everything is seen on the screen. So you touch the screen, 24 hours, what is my embryo doing? 48 hours, what is it doing? 96 hours, what is it doing? And the blastocyst. And you can see the actual embryo growing from the 0 PN stage to the 2 PN stage, and then it goes on into the 2 cell, 4 cell, 8 cell, into the morula, and then it blossoms into the blastocyst. So the entire thing can be seen here, the entire development of the embryo can be viewed on the screen. And this is very important because there are some areas where sometimes syngamy, it should happen, but sometimes there is a 3 PN, there is a 5 PN, so all these are abnormal. And when you see the embryo, these embryos developing this way, these embryos are ranked grade C because they go into, the grading goes down because they are not fit to go inside the uterine cavity because they may be associated with abnormalities. So that is the reason why. And we also look at the micronuclei, and when you see lots of micronuclei, it means that this embryo could be abnormal. So all these things can be viewed very well on the screen. So the embryoscope, it also creates an atmosphere which is like the human fallopian tube, where the egg and the sperm normally meet to form the baby. And because it creates an atmosphere like the human body, the quality of the embryo is much better because it grows in natural conditions. And once the embryo develops, then we want to see the development of the embryo. You don't have to take the embryo out to see the development, but you have an inbuilt camera. So the camera continues to record the development of the embryo automatically every 20 minutes for each embryo, and therefore the development of each embryo is recorded, and you can view these development of the embryos later. And we also have an incorporated artificial intelligence based KIT score system, which actually classifies the embryos, scores the embryos, and gives us a rank 1, rank 2, rank 3 embryo. So automatically, if you want to put in 1, you want to put in 2, you select the 2 best embryos. We always want the first attempt to be the best attempt, and we want to select the top class embryos to put back. And the embryoscope is very, very useful in deciding this and helping us to choose the best embryo. So the next thing, after the embryo is created, now we'll go into the actual incubation systems. Now once the eggs are collected, they are separated under this microscope, they are stripped, and then they are put back into the incubators. The incubators, we told you we have an array, this one and this one. So you put it into whichever incubator you want to, and once the development happens, the next is the eggs are being incubated. After about 2 to 4 hours, then we inject the sperm into the egg. ICSI is the system which is present in this microscope. This is called an ICSI microscope, and you see sperm at 400 magnification and you select the top class sperm. Now with this system, this is what is normally used. Now there is a software introduced in this which is called IMSI. So in IMSI, you see the sperm at 7000 magnification and you select the top class sperm. It's a computer generated image and selection of sperm. So you select the top class sperm. Naturally, when you select a top class sperm, you get a top class embryo. And once the embryo is selected, and once the sperm is selected, it's injected into the egg and the embryos are kept into the incubators for further development. This is the embryoscope, and the embryoscope, this embryoscope has chambers for 6 patients, and the embryos are actually loaded onto each dish, and once the injection is done, the embryos are kept in the embryoscope. This is the screen which shows one patient's embryos. So she has 12 embryos, and we will now see each embryo separately to appreciate the growth of the embryo. These are the embryos, they are all in different stages of division, as you would see. Now we will move on to one separate embryo so that you can see the development from the 2PN stage up to the blastocyst stage. So here you see the egg, the sperm has been injected, and here you see the formation of the 2 pronuclei. So this is the 2PN stage, and the next is it goes through syngamy and now it becomes a 2-cell embryo. This embryo now divides and it becomes a 4-cell embryo, and it's now going to become an 8-cell embryo. So this is an 8-cell embryo. Now the embryo, the cells start fusing and it now becomes a mass of cells. And that is called a morula. So the morula now starts blossoming out into a blastocyst. You see the blastocele in the center, you see the trophectoderm surrounding the embryo, and you see the inner cell mass. So here is a fully blown blastocyst, the day 5 embryo, and the stage to which the human embryo can be developed to the maximum outside the human body. Once the embryos are created, then you reach a stage where you want to put the embryos back into the uterus. So when you want to do that, we measure the thickness of the shell of the embryo, and if it is more than 15 microns, embryos take a long time to come out, and therefore we use the laser to thin it down so that it comes out easily on time, and to help it to stick to the lining of the uterus, we coat it with embryo glue. So this is these are all the high-tech systems: selection of best sperm, creation and selection of best embryo, hatching the embryo with the laser, and using glue to help it to fix to the lining. So when you do a combination of all these, it helps to give you very good pregnancy rates. Now there are some people who actually have had abnormal embryos earlier, have had repeated miscarriages. So I will take you into that system next. So this is the andrology lab. So we are now going into the andrology lab, and like I told you, once the door is open, all other doors are closed. Until the door is closed, nobody can open the other doors. So this is a highly sterile setup where we actually prepare our sperms for the process of ICSI or IMSI. So the sperms are actually put under this microscope. This is the sperm preparation. It's done with a spermifuge, which has several programs to actually suit the patient, and the programs are set and the sperms are actually washed and taken. And once the sperms are selected, then you look under the microscope, make sure that everything is okay, and then you actually take it into the main lab for injecting into the egg. Now another thing which we must know about this lab, this is the cryologic freezing system. So we need sperms to be frozen here, because each patient in this lab has a frozen backup sample, because sometimes they cannot produce a sample on demand on that day. So we have this cryologic system, and all patients have a backup sample, and it's one of the highest systems to freeze sperms, and we keep it here. And once the sperms are frozen, they are actually put into this can, into this tank, and the tank actually is used to freeze only sperms. So this is a sperm room, a pure sperm area, where you look at sperms, you actually identify, take them for injecting, and then here you freeze, put it into the freezer. So this is one of the dry incubator, which is very useful to prepare the sample. And we also have a carbon dioxide incubator, because sometimes you want to, when certain media you need a carbon dioxide incubator. So we have a carbon dioxide incubator when we use it when we use those particular media. This is the cryology lab, and this is the place where the eggs and the embryos are frozen. So like the previous room was a totally sperm area, this is a totally egg and embryo area, and it's totally cut off from the rest of the lab. So every compartment is an airtight compartment, and unless you close, the other one doesn't open. Now here, once we use this to examine the embryos and the eggs, and the freezing system is here, and the liquid nitrogen tanks are here, and then you just dip it into the liquid nitrogen tanks, and once it's prepared, dip it into the liquid nitrogen tank, and then you keep it inside this area. Now this has several patients' embryos, and they are all labeled. Their number is there, their label is there, all information is there in that label, and you can easily identify in which compartment any embryo, any patient's embryos are. So it's an absolutely foolproof system to actually freeze your eggs and embryos. So whenever all information is then stored into this system. So this lab is a totally paper-free lab, and everything is computerized, and you need any information, you go into the system, you identify the number of the straw, you go into the embryo tank, and then or the oocyte tank, and you pull out those embryos and you let it for use. You would see that this floor is separate from the other floors. Now why is it like this? Because we found that when liquid nitrogen was used to freeze embryos, it corroded the floor. So we found out which was friendly for the lab, which flooring was friendly for a lab where freezing is done. So we identified this particular flooring, which is very friendly to liquid nitrogen, and you can maintain it safe all the time. Now having looked at the entire lab, now the embryos are there, they are frozen, you can freeze them for any number of years, and there are two important artificial intelligence systems which I would like to speak about. One is the witness system. The witness system starts at the level of reception. So everything is in the system, and once a label is created there, that label is on the patient's case sheet, is on the patient's test tubes, and it goes right into all the dishes. So everything is labeled the same way, so that the information is there all the time. It is a perfect way to maintain a patient's records perfectly, because there is no mix up of any sperm, no mix up of eggs and embryos, and it actually witnesses everything and stores everything, so that everything is in order. And many patients ask me, doctor, how can you guarantee me that my eggs and embryos are not mixed, my sperms are not mixed? So the witness system is the answer. So the next thing is the lab monitoring system. We want our lab to be totally under our control. We all know that the fluctuations are there in electricity. We put on a 24-hour system of system where the current is there all the time by using a gensets, but sometimes even the top class generators, they topple us, and therefore it's very important to know, and sometimes these UPS systems topple us, and therefore we should know when the systems break down. So we have an alarm system which is actually connected to the most important equipment in this lab. And whom is it connected to? To the reception, to the embryologist, to the clinician, and to everybody whom you identify needs to know this information, and whoever is closest. It is also attached to their mobiles, and whoever is closest, they run immediately and they make sure that the systems are set right. So this is the beauty of the alarm systems, the lab monitoring system. So now we have made our lab perfect. So once the I was just speaking about those who have abnormal embryos. So when they have abnormal embryos and when their previous history they've had abnormal embryos, they've had multiple implantation failures and recurrent pregnancy losses, then it's important to identify why and to correct it if it is at the level of the embryos. So we use pre-implantation genetic testing, and for this the laser is actually fixed here. The laser is used to cut the sperm tail. I always tell my husband we can cut the tail with the laser. So, you can cut the tail with the laser, anybody's tail. Okay, so the sperm tail can be cut. You can also use it to thin down the embryos, the assisted hatching, to take one cell from the embryo, a blastomere, and this blastomere can be sent to the genetic lab, and the genetic lab actually organizes an analysis of the embryos, and if you give them 4 or 5 embryos, they label it as embryo 1, 2, 3, 4, and they actually give us, okay, embryo A, B, C are normal and the others are abnormal. So you put the normal embryo back inside the uterus. Now what happens to the rest of the embryo? It's actually kept in freezing in our freezing systems, and when you get back the results after about a month or so, then you choose the best embryos, you segregate the best, you separate the abnormal, and you call the patient back and prepare her for embryo transfer. So this is called pre-implantation genetic testing. An extended way of doing a pre-implantation genetic testing is NICS. So in this you have to traumatize the embryo, but in NICS it's a non-invasive chromosome screening. So all you have to do is to take the culture media where you have cultured the embryos, and that is subjected to analysis, and that identifies the abnormality. Each embryo's culture media is taken separately, and by looking at the metabolomics of that particular culture media, you're able to identify whether it's normal or abnormal. And we are doing a comparative study of the PGT embryos and the embryos which are screened by NICS, and trying to find out whether there is a good correlation. And this study is going on all over the world, and when we find that it is equally good, then definitely we all will go to a non-invasive method of screening the embryos. So there are different ways of sperm selection too. One is the normal sperm selection which we do under the microscope, but there is a technology called microfluidics, and the microfluidics also helps to select the sperms by a simple membrane separation without any revolutions that you normally put it in a centrifuge and you do that. So the sperm is not subjected to all those rotations. There's also a magnetic sorting of the sperms. So these are all different ways to identify the top class sperms. And our aim is you want a healthy egg, you want a healthy sperm, you want a top class sperm, and you want to create the best embryo and the best baby that you can create, and improve pregnancy rates. The pregnancy rates in 1980 started at 8%, and today our pregnancy rates are close to 80% to 85% in select patients. So all this has been because of the tremendous technology advances which have happened over the last few years. Anything which comes into this lab is made absolutely sterile. We clean it before it enters, and it all goes into the cupboard here. So the things inside are also kept absolutely clean. And who maintains the lab? This is my chief embryologist, Mr. Radhakrishnan. He is actually doing his PhD, and he's one of the top class embryologists I can speak of. Thank you very much.